And we're back. So, Bits and Bytes podcast. I'm excited to be back in here. We got a great guest with us today. I'm Matt Scott with my co-host Joey.
Pleasure to be back, Matt. I feel like it's been an eternity since we've been in the Bits and Bytes studio by Byteworks.
I know. It's been a little bit longer than I would have liked for, Joey. I've been missing you.
I know. I just need my Bits and Bytes fix, y'all. I need it.
Yeah.
And we got the right guest today to help with that.
That's
right. We really do.
I can't wait to introduce him, Mr. Simon O'Donnell. So Simon's coming with us. Simon, why don't you introduce yourself? You do a better job than I can.
Hi guys, Simon O'Donnell. I head up the go-to-market strategy for Athonet, which is now a HPE company for the Americas. Prior to that, I ran Athonet in the Americas prior to the acquisition. And before that, I've been in around 28 years in the telco business.
So when you say Americas, I assume that it's North and South America that you're overseeing, huh? That's great. That's definitely going to be a question that I got for you, is the difference that you're seeing in infrastructure and such. So, well, Simon, thanks so much for making time out of your day. We know you got a lot going on, but I definitely know that our listeners are 100% interested in learning more about private 5G. And from what I've experienced with you, you're the guy that's going to help us inform them. So thanks for doing that. Real quick, before we get started, I want to kind of level set what we're trying to do here on the Bits and Bytes podcast. So the Bits and Bytes podcast was created to share key updates, innovations, trends, and best practices in the technology space. Our goal is to create a community to learn and grow from one another. This is now, what, our 12th episode?
13.
Shoot.
Woo!
Lucky 13. And, you know, I feel like we've been doing that, Joey. We've been bringing the right guests, the right information, what our listeners are looking for. And, you know, as always, they could always send us notes, emails, comments, as far as if they want to get deeper or have specific questions, right?
That's right. And it's like shows like this that kind of delve into the next layer. So when you hear terms like 5G, what does that mean? But then beyond that, the sub layer to that is, what's the difference between public and private 5G? And let's say you're an SMB owner or somebody who heads an enterprise level organization. What does that mean for me? Is it important for me? And at the end of the day, how does it help me improve the bottom line?
Yep. And I think the greatest thing that you said there, Joey, is what does that mean for me? Because we know that everybody's different, right? So everybody has different use cases. And I think that that's the key why we bring the subject matter experts in here, because they are familiar with, you know, the specifics of the nuances for the various channels, the various segments. What does this mean for, like you said, the big enterprise customer or the school district? So, Simon, why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit on, you know, private 5G is not necessarily a new concept, right? So tell us a little bit about, you know, what you're seeing out there, a brief overview of private 5G and how people are leveraging that nowadays more than ever.
So really, when we talk about private 5G, the technology has been around for a long time, and we've seen it grow through the various Gs. A lot of the deployments that private 5G, as we call it today, a lot of the deployments that we're seeing is still 4G, and it's really down to radio availability and end user device availability. But what is the private cellular world today? It's essentially we're run off the standards, we're 3GPP standards, so we're taking the same technology that you have today in your macro network, but we have virtualized that and deployed a solution now that can be deployed to any SMB or anyone that needs it. For example, we're deploying on Cell on Wheels, a completely independent core network that allows you both the mobility to move that vehicle around and create a private cellular network wherever you want.
And let me throw something out there, not to lead the witness, tell me if I'm wrong, but public Wi-Fi, right, versus having a private network. The reason why one would want that is because nowadays everybody's joining public networks, right? And, you know, that additional bandwidth is, you know, creating latency or, you know, bandwidth issues, right? So by having the private 5G, that allows for way more consistency and
Lower latency.
Yep. Is that what the biggest benefit is, or the core? We need to have this because we can't have this network go down, or we can't have, people jumping on here.
Absolutely. There's a few areas in where private 5G really has the strength, and that would be around coverage, right? We can deploy a cellular network that indoor would cover maybe 4, 5, 6 Wi-Fi APs, but also outdoor it can get 8 plus the equivalent of Wi-Fi APs. So what we're seeing in the adoption stage is, look, we want to cover these large area networks. Say, for example, you have a logistics company that has a large outdoor area and a wireless mesh network just isn't working. That's where we can deploy a cellular network. So you've got the coverage side. You mentioned low latency. A lot of the devices, PLCs out there at an amusement park, they rely on really low latency to ensure that ride isn't going to stop or it isn't going to crash. So
Pretty important.
Yes, pretty important. And it's the performance, the uptime that you get out of a cellular network. We can build it to be a 5 nines, the equivalent of your mobile network operator. So no single point of failure. So these are hyper secure and hyper resilient systems. Then we've got the SIM card. So some of our customers are saying, look, we need a real secure network. We want to ensure that the end user device is tied to a SIM. So if someone takes a SIM out and plugs it into something else, it's not going to work. So you've got that SIM level security as well. And then the mobility aspect. Mobility, you've got a lot of vehicles moving within a warehouse, some at very high speeds, and they're increasing up to 75 miles an hour in some of the devices that we're working with today. And the handoff between radio to radio needs to be seamless. And what we're finding is in the Wi-Fi network, it was never designed for this high speed, low latency transport through multiple radios. So having that also helps a lot and makes it a viable solution.
What would you say are the greatest opportunistic or the verticals that you're seeing the most usage for private 5G?
Yeah, so during COVID, it was all about digital diversity, but that's past. So it was essentially getting internet access to the kids in their homes. We've moved on now. We're seeing some of those universities and schools that are saying, look, we have the technology now. We want to expand upon that. We want to offer, we have one customer that's looking at EA Sports.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
So one of the ideas there is, look, we can dictate quality of service, low latency, and the same level of throughput, right? So you're eliminating some of the other aspects there that would be available using a 5G network. So that's one area. We're also seeing logistics, obviously, movement, rapid mobile devices that need the network that can support that. We're also seeing at concerts and large sporting events where you want to segment.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Festivals and stuff. I could see those, pop-up networks being needed and stuff.
Yeah. Bonnaroo.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my gosh.
How many times have you gone to a large event and you can't get on because everybody's on the public Wi-Fi and it's just horrific? So...
Yeah, and typically what we see there is, we go to these events, there's 80,000 people turn up. The macro network provider will provide a cell on wheels. You look at your phone, you've got your 5 bars of coverage, but you still can't communicate.
Yeah, that's right. You're so right.
Yeah. And the reason is all 80,000 are trying to connect to those few radios that are on that cell on wheels. But the issue there is that you have point of sale systems that are
used. You can't run a card.
Can't run a card. So with a partner of ours, we were able to use a private cellular network that wasn't targeting the 80,000 people that were in attendance, but actually targeting the 87 mission critical devices, point of sale. beer tents. I know you were going there. Beer tents were the most important any point of sale system, merchandise, and then security access. So we created a solution just covering a relatively small number of devices, but it did what it said in the tin. It actually solved a solution that was needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Those events, they thrive off of not just getting people there, but, being able to sell to those people when they're there.
Yeah, don't get in the way of me and my beer. All right, do not get in the way. And yesterday I learned this. I had no idea. So my wife took our son to the Braves game, and she went to get him like Dippin' Dots or something, and she pulled out some cash. And the lady looked at her like she had two heads. It was like that Georgia Lottery commercial, cash is obsolete. But she's like, ma'am, I'm sorry, this is a cashless place. And I was like, what if, to your example of the point of sale systems at a venue, what if that crashed? You have no way to sell your Dippin' Dots. You got no way to sell all your hot dogs. It's a cashless place. So have you seen or heard of use cases where somebody's experienced that and so they're leaning into that technology because they've endured that?
100%. A lot of our customers now that would specialize in these large stadiums are segmenting the traffic. Listen, the fans can have Wi-Fi. Let's have the fans on the Wi-Fi network for now. It's going to change in the future. We can talk about that a little later. But let's have any of our mission critical traffic, anything from communication for security, right through to the Dippin' Dot guy that's mobile, walking around all the fans, having the ability to support that. So that's 100% where we're seeing a lot of our major deployments today.
How about in healthcare? Things that, we always had a saying when we were manufacturing consumer products, we'd say, hey, we're not, saving lives here, but healthcare has a lot of people, and devices connected that can go down, right? So is that a vertical in which you're seeing growth in?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of focus around. I mean, you still see doctors today walking around with pagers, and that's because it's they can't rely on the Wi-Fi network, or there are limitations to the Wi-Fi network that they have there. Again, it's about the mass number of folks that are using a network at any time and how we can segment that into mission critical. I had a buddy of mine that works with a robotics company, and they have this really cool scalpel that takes AI feedback and it'll augmented reality feedback. So it'll move from, the surgeon gets a feed from an MRI, an X-ray, and multiple elements, so that when he's cutting out whatever it is he needs to work on, that he's getting exactly what he needs and touching exactly what he needs. Now, the problem there was it was using Wi-Fi. So someone walking in with a GoPro could effectively take that Wi-Fi network down. So we're working with, using our cellular technology, which is a lot more reliant on this quality of services to support these mission critical solutions within healthcare.
That's great. I think the use cases can just keep rolling, right? Manufacturing line goes down. Well, that costs you how much money, right?
Right.
So businesses have dependency nowadays on consistency, and that consistency is mainly driven from the connection to the network, right? So it's a critical, important need for our businesses nowadays. Now, let me ask you another question along those lines. But Simon, you look like you had something to say.
No, it's just interesting what we're seeing in manufacturing now is, look, we're here to augment the Wi-Fi. We're not here to replace Wi-Fi. We see that Wi-Fi is viable, and obviously we're now part of Aruba, so I wouldn't be killing the Wi-Fi solution. It's fantastic. But at the same time, what we are seeing is manufacturers, especially in greenfield, when they're building a new facility, they're saying, do we need cable everywhere? Lines change on the production floor, and then they have to re-cable and move cable around. One customer says, look, they can eliminate $2 million worth of cable by introducing a private cellular network. That's the real world scenarios that we're working in now, where customers are saying, look, maybe we can remove that cable. We've got low latency, high throughput, guaranteed service using cellular. We'll still have Wi-Fi for where it's important in static areas where you've got ubiquitous devices. Any device can essentially connect to Wi-Fi. But for other services, maybe we rely on private cellular rather than running physical cable.
Are there situations where, when you're consulting with these organizations, where your legit feedback is, you know what, it might make more sense to keep your network public?
Yeah, there are types. Like, for example, we get a lot of customers come to us and say, okay, I have a neutral host requirement where it's, I'm a large hotel chain and my AT&T customer just doesn't have access whenever they come in. And for that, while we're working on solutions to support that through neutral host, it's still not fully baked yet. We're essentially waiting for that solution to be baked. And once we have that, we'll support
Sounds interesting, yeah.
Yeah, but ultimately, we do at times. I mean, our customer, we want to make sure that they have the best technology, and we don't want to sell them something that they're not going to use.
And here's the thing. This would be usually the point in the show where Matt says, okay, I'm not trying to do this thing we call a pitch slap here on the show. He's not going to try and do it. So I'm actually going to play devil's advocate and get ahead of you on this, Matt. I already asked, reasons why this wouldn't make sense. But then also, what's some of the pushback, maybe the time it takes to design and scale this for an enterprise organization, maybe the startup investment for
investment, a cost of equipment, or, give us a little bit on that. Like, can they use their existing infrastructure? Do they need to go entirely different hardware, et cetera? Give us some background on what does that look like for somebody that's potentially looking to get into this.
And then maybe for the difference between an SMB and enterprise level too, if you can add on to that.
Yeah, so we have designed our solution, and when I say we, it's the Athonet side, it's the legacy Athonet part of HP. We have designed our solution to be a software-only solution. We weren't radio vendors at that time, so we designed a solution to work with any radio and work with any capable devices that were out there today. The startup, we can deploy on a small, essentially an Intel NUC, small form factor platform supporting 25 SIM cards for a POC, but have that scale up to millions of end user devices. So typically when you look at the investment is the radios, obviously, and we're seeing with 4G radios, the price per radio is coming down significantly over the last year or so. 5G radios, yes, there's a cost for early adoption for 5G new radios, but again, we expect that to come down. When you compare that with the coverage that you get, it's on par with a Wi-Fi AP strategy. From the core side, and if you think in the Wi-Fi world, it would be a wireless LAN controller. It's really an agnostic platform we can deploy on your hypervisor and scale based upon that. We have various different cloud support as well. So if we want to run on one of the cloud platforms, we can support that. And then it's around scale. So we can start off really, really small, 25 SIM cards, and then roam up to multiple millions. Typically, when we look at a customer, say, for example, it's a SMB, we look at how we can scale that effectively for the customer. And that can typically come in a format where we either deploy these small little core networks, almost like an all-in-one solution, radio, core, and whatever number of devices you want to connect to or SIM cards. But we can also design the architecture where we have a centralized component, so managing those SIM cards. So if you can imagine a business that has 100, 150 locations throughout, and maybe they're using the same device for their point of sale or for scanners, we can centrally manage those. So any scanner can go to any store and automatically connect to the cellular network. And then based upon that, we can also have, if there's a low latency requirement, you've got video equipment or you've got robotics roaming around, we can put our user plane at the edge. And it's really only focused on the throughput, the traffic. So it authenticates centrally, but then all that traffic is managed locally on that local network. So you can manage the system effectively. So we have growth strategies, and it's really down to, you know, the end user, and we work very closely. You know, typically when we first engage with a customer, it's radio planning number one, right? So the radios act differently than your typical Wi-Fi AP. So we want to look at, you know, the area that you want covered. Is it indoor, outdoor? We do radio designs there. We have a lot more penetration maybe than your typical Wi-Fi network. And prisons seem to be getting a lot of interest now. Yeah, very sensitive audience. But
They got thick walls. So
Yeah, that's a good point.
and you know, so we definitely run radio planning on every facility that we deploy in, just to ensure that every aspect's covered. And then, you know, obviously from that, then we do the network planning, making sure that all those all the areas, all the VLANs and everything that you want connected is connected efficiently, so we can separate traffic for specific VLANs.
are all private 5G networks, are they all created equal? What differentiates between, you know, Ethernet and others?
Yeah, great question. Are they all created equal? Technology-wise, they should be, right? They all follow the same standards and should interface. But it was really how we get there. How did we get to develop a private cellular network versus some of our competitors? A lot of our competitors that are deploying 100 million plus subscriber core networks, right, decided to follow us because we were the first to deploy a private cellular network in the world. And we took our software functions and we virtualized each of the components of a private cellular network. And that's how we're able to deploy at a scale down. We can scale really low down into a small form factor. A lot of our competitors took their large monolithic core networks and tried to package that down into a private cellular environment, and it just isn't working.
Yep. So it doesn't scale as well.
It doesn't scale as well. And again, it was designed, our solution was designed, and I don't want to preach about my solution, but
Sure.
we designed the solution knowing that our target audience was the enterprise market. And we know that not everyone out there is a telco engineer and knows exactly how to provision a HSS or an MME and manage that. So we designed our solution with a dashboard that made it really, really easy to deploy and manage from an SMB level. Your IT networking guy can manage a private cellular network. We don't need a telecoms degree. We don't need telecoms experience. It's simply provision SIM, activate SIM, deactivate SIM. Yes, in the background, there's a little bit of work to get it up and running and deployable. But once we have that, you're self-sufficient.
I love it. I love it. And, you know, I see so many, as I said before, use cases, applications, and growing, right?
Yeah.
For the consistency and specific usage of private 5G and not replacing, you know, general Wi-Fi, right? So totally a great topic of discussion. Simon, thank you for joining us today. We're going to probably see a bunch of questions coming out of this. I'm sure there's things that we didn't hit on.
Yeah.
But our goal is to kind of bring that information, share it with our listeners, and grow together. So, Simon, thank you very much for joining us. This is episode 13.
13.
Bits and Bytes podcast. We'll see y'all soon.